Hi everyone, I'm Nadia, and in today's video I'm making a resin beach tray and coaster set inspired by my recent trip to Thailand. And in this video I'm using Just For You Online UK's Apex resin. It's a 1:1 ratio by volume, and to measure each part I started off by pouring my resin into 1 cup and poured equal amounts of the hardener into a cup, and also poured that into the larger cup. Then I mixed the 2 parts together for several minutes. And if you'd like to give it a try, I'll have a discount code linked down in my description. After I mixed well, I poured it into another cup where I mixed a little bit more and then went ahead and added in my sand. I'm starting off by doing 1 layer of sand in my tray and coaster molds to achieve depth. I added in a mixture of some craft sand and some very small crushed glass pieces and mixed them together. Then I added in some of Just For You Online UK's white ignition dust, which gives a beautiful shine and shimmer. And I started to pour into my molds. I used a silicone mixing stick to help spread the resin and the sand into the very edges of the molds and make sure that the whole area is covered with sand. And I used a torch gun to pop any air bubbles. I allow that layer to harden and come back the next day. Now I'm going to be using some spray adhesive, and I carefully spray that onto the sand areas. Then I take Demolding's True Aluminum Gold, and with a wooden stick I sprinkle it over the sand area. I started off by spreading it out with a paintbrush, then I realized that it's best to remove any of the excess powder and started to blend it in with my fingers. And to make sure that there's no excess powder floating, I just took a damp wipe and went over the areas. Now I'm mixing in my resin once more, again pouring equal parts of the part A and B, and mixing them together for several minutes. It's always better to mix more than not mix enough, so most of the times I'll actually end up mixing around 5 minutes. Once it's mixed well, I separate it into smaller cups to add in my pigments. I'm starting off with Just For You Online UK's green furry pigment, and in the container it looks quite dark and dense, so I'm taking a very small amount onto my wooden stick and mixing it into the clear resin. I always like to start off with a little bit of pigment, and then you can always add more. Next, I use their chameleon pigment in the shade blue green and add it into a separate cup. And I start by pouring the Green Fury pigmented resin at the top of the molds. Then poured the blue-green pigmented resin right below. I poured a little bit more of the clear resin into one of the cups so that I could add in Demolding's alcohol ink in the shade Electric Green. I wanted to make the blues just a little bit more green since the water in Thailand looks very green. I added in a few drops, mixed it together, and poured it into my molds. I used a silicone makeup brush to help spread and blend the resin. Now I want to make it just a little bit more opaque, so I'm adding in more of the pigments and a mixture of the alcohol ink and the blue-green chameleon pigment. In another cup, I added in some clear resin and some craft sand. and then poured that into the bottom of the molds. I also mixed in some of the gold pigment into the sand, which sunk to the bottom of the cup, so only really showed up once I poured out all of the sand. But now that I have some sand that's a little bit more golden, I went ahead and applied that into areas of where the sea is. And I started to add in some seashells into the sand area. And here I am the next day demolding. If you'd like bonus tips from each video and more resin guidance, be sure to check out my Patreon page, which I'll leave linked below. I really appreciate all of your support. I used an X-Acto knife to get rid of any lifted edges and to prepare it for layers of resin out of the molds, which will cause it to be nicely domed. I flipped them over onto their backside and started to apply liquid latex near the edges, and we use this condiment bottle for easy control. For those of you who aren't familiar with liquid latex, we use it to protect the bottom side of our piece from any drops of resin that flow over while doing layers out of the molds. This way, those drops will easily come off with the liquid latex and not harden onto your resin piece. I use a silicone makeup brush to push the liquid latex to the very edges. Once the liquid latex has dried, I prop them up onto cups and mix in my resin once more. I pour the clear resin onto each piece, and again using a silicone makeup brush, I spread the resin to the very edges and make sure that the whole area is covered except for the sand area. I use this opportunity to mix in my pigments once more, just to add a little bit more depth. And for my waves, I'm going to be using Just For You Online UK's pigment paste in the shade Supreme White. I mix it in the container first before I add it into my cup of resin. I use the wooden stick to apply the white pigmented resin along the shoreline and blow it out using my heat gun. I'll have all of the products that you see in this video in my description, so be sure to check that out. And if you'd like a more detailed video on how to create waves and lacing in your resin piece, I'll leave a video linked above. I let this layer harden and came back the next day to do one more set of waves. Now I'm going to be doing the top coat, and you should always make sure that your surface is level before you pour resin. I didn't add in my handles in the last layer, and I don't like them to be held in by only the top coat, so I'm using Demolding's epoxy rapid glue to make sure that the handles are really secure. You squeeze both parts out of the bottle and mix it together, and it's ready to apply. It has a very short work time of 5 minutes, so you do need to be rather quick, but it has a very strong bond. I mixed in my resin once more and poured on my top coat. I did the tray separate from the coasters because I worked on one more tray after I did this one. Here I am removing the liquid latex. I used an edging marker to add on a gold trim. And here's the final product. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to see more videos like this in the future. Follow me on my Instagram, Summer Girl Designs, and my mom's Instagram, Wild Heart Resin Art.